Hi, it's me again. So I guess the bout of motivation I had yesterday might have been a little bit more longer lasting than I had thought. So I guess I'll try to do this again today. So let's get right to it. I want to talk about this vision I have for a research project, and I just want to see what kind of things people would do with this idea. I would love to let me just get into it and then I'll talk about what I would love to see come out of it. So there's this project called Wikidata that I only recently managed to find out existed, but it's like a structured database of a bunch of entities and relations between entities. It's just like a huge knowledge graph. And it has everyday, average entities and whatever. And it's a nice structured database, right? So before this point in my mind, we didn't have too much more than Wikipedia. And then people would probably take something unstructured like Wikipedia and then just decide, okay, it's unstructured, and then they'll have people to structure the data. I never even thought of a world where people just directly dealt with structured data like that. But now we do have that. And I just thought, wow, more people need to know about this. This is incredible. And the reason I think it's incredible is because I think I'm not going to talk too much, hopefully, about AI, deep learning, all of that jazz. But I just think what we have in deep learning is kind of overkill for the use cases we're using. It's always been a little bit bewildering to me that we have this world where people are trying to use GPT models for factual to extract facts about the world. And the reason this is a little bit weird to me, I think it makes perfectly good sense to say, oh, I want a response in natural language, and I want that natural language response to contain all of the things I want out of words in a sentence, right? I don't expect people to want responses in the form of a knowledge graph. I get that. I don't want people to read JSON payloads, right? But what I think is and I've had this idea floating around in my head. It's a missing middle. Now, this is a term that's usually reserved for housing, because in housing there's a missing middle. You have big city density, and then you have suburbs, and the missing middle is the part that's missing in between, and that's how I've been introduced to the concept. Right, so there's a missing middle between JSON and there's a missing middle between JSON and large language models. I feel this gap in between. And I just wonder, okay. We have all of those tabular data formats, and we have some knowledge graphs, but it's just a little bit bewildering to me that we haven't had too much in the middle, too much dynamic property graphs where you have knowledge graph, but instead of hard relations, you could explore the transitions from that node in that knowledge graph instead of hard relations, you could have soft relations, right? And that would be like a cluster of nodes that you can transition from when you start at this node. And yeah, basically what I'm thinking about is knowledge graphs, but softer. And you might be getting some, connections. I think like every person who's like sufficiently a scientist, and I am by no means like sufficiently a scientist, but every person who like peruses science for a sufficiently long amount of time, like has this like sci-fi like tinge to what they think about and what they speculate about. Anyway, I think there's a missing middle. And I think so to go back to my like original point, I'm introducing this idea of like a new internet protocol or something like that. We wouldn't need a new internet protocol for this, but I want to go back to that kind of like foundation. I'm thinking about having a research project where like we just have like people who can just write data to a database, and all of the data would be structured, but it wouldn't have to be like, it would be kind of like Wikidata in that you could have a bunch of people commit factual data to it, but I want this to be like a Wikidata where you could commit a bunch of listings to your favorite like stuff. Like you could post just any old list that you like. It doesn't have to be facts about the world. You can just post things that make you feel a certain way. You can just post, it's kind of like this medium between social media and like, yeah, it would lie kind of at the intersection between like social media, where you can like follow particular topics and that kind of thing, and a structured database. And what I think this would address is, I think by default, like there's this kind of like tabularity bias in the way that like we humans interface with data. And I think that's very often the case because like tables are so compelling, like they're so simple, like you get it. Like everything is in a column and it's in a row, and the row tells you something and the column tells you something, and you know that at that cell, both things are true. The cell, the intersection of those columns and the rows, it makes sense. But then you have to join, right? You have to perform like a SQL join operation, because guess what? Like entities relate to each other. That part of things is just not as representable in a tabular format without doing joins. Okay. And then joins are like, I think in my personal experience as a, everyday developer, it's just like joins are like annoying. Like they're like, you almost wish you never had to join. Like that's how annoying they are. And the reason they're annoying is probably because like, oh, my entity doesn't have a like primary key that's uniquely, unambiguous, like universally unique, and all of that. And oh shocks, like I have to find like a unique property in my data and then construct a unique primary key for my. Anyway, it's like a whole mess when you are working with data sets that are intrinsically graphical. Or sorry, I say graphical like in the sense that they are composed. They consist of graph relations. But maybe I should use a different word for that. Maybe I could say like networked, or I'm not going to use the word relational because that's already taken, and it means kind of, I think, a table is a graph. Like, you can represent a table as a graph, but I think it makes me just really wonder, like, how much stuff is out there in the database world that we just haven't really explored, in terms of like graphs, relations, and all of that kind of thing. And that's why I would want to have such a research experiment. That research experiment would be essentially like, I want to give people like a capacity, like they can only, upload a couple megabytes per month or something. And they interface with this social network by like changing files on a virtual file system, or it doesn't matter. It frankly shouldn't matter. They could like hit a REST endpoint. They could change files on a fake Unix like terminal. But the point is, I want developers to be able to, like, they shouldn't even have to be developers. But what I would want this to be is like an aggregation site that kind of acts like Reddit, but is like fundamentally structured and all of that. And you wouldn't comment on a post. Like, a post would not contain comments, but you could comment on it by introducing your own node, which points back to that resource, and you have a comment on it. And the reason this feels like such a compelling idea to me is that it's kind of like a rethinking of the internet. Like, I think that one thing would be that's kind of interesting, and it could be a part of the internet, but we don't really explore it. And maybe I could even make my own browser to explore this idea. But one thing that I think is profound, but we haven't really explored yet as a species, is the idea that you could like have these like subgraphs. And when I talk about these subgraphs, I mean like, imagine you took a web page, right? And then you said, okay, I'm going to click on every single link in that web page once. I'm going to click once on a link. And then what you would end up with is a collection of pages that are reachable by clicking one link. So now you have like a graph traversal, you have a graph traversal case. You say, hey, I'm going to grab all nodes that are reachable within one node of this thing. And we see this like all the time when an article kind of like creates like links to the tags and then links to like related pages. And those related pages have their title and heading. But no, I mean, like, I want you to literally have the visual that these ideas are like networked and all on one page. So it would be like a Wikipedia article that has all of the related Wikipedia articles like literally open, and you have like a bunch of squares on your screen. You're looking at a network graph of like the central article in the middle, and then you have your like central article in the middle, and then you have these lines emanating from it in all directions. You can scroll in, zoom in on that individual article, up to a certain point, and then you can scroll through it. Like your scroll is captured by that particular node, and you can scroll through it. And then at the very same moment, you can look at another idea right there. And I know it just sounds like I'm talking about like a particular like flavor of web browsing. But what I really wonder about is just how many clicks we don't take, how many links we don't click, and how much lies on the other side of that. Like, what if we made those transitions as easy as they possibly could be? What if we had a huge graph, and just by hovering over a node, it expanded all of the other nodes that are reachable from that node that, have the highest similarity to the topics that you're able to see on your screen already. So something like that is absolutely possible today, and maybe it's like an interesting new novel way of browsing Wikipedia. But I guess like my point, the whole point of all of this is I would love to, one, experiment with ways we could implement that in Wikipedia today. And then two, I would love to just like make a research project, and I would love to just like have a database, and I'll say like, hey, user, you can make this amount of data changes per day. Do with that what you will, and just see how that evolves. And obviously we'll have to like police certain content, like people, and that's the tragic part, is that experiments like this can only be done in trusted settings. And that's the tragic part, because the like trusted setting, like people are going to use this to do bad things, and that's like terrible. And only trusted settings, only when people's reputations are at stake do people do that kind of thing. Yeah, that's kind of sad, because I would have loved to see the pure experimentation that comes from that. Like, I'm not going to be able to afford moderation staff that will take care of this entire website, and it wouldn't be kind of like I don't know, it could be a website. I don't know. The point is, I don't have a staff to take care of it, whatever it is, this knowledge graph idea. And it wouldn't be anything that... Anyway, the point is, I would just love to see what people did with that kind of new flavor, that new format. Because maybe one thing that I failed to articulate is just like how relatively expensive it is to do a click to another website. Like, I know I'm hardly going to get an ad-free utopia if I like have this knowledge graph idea and I actually execute it. I know. But it takes so long, relatively speaking, for a website to load. Like, I'm talking about this like stream of consciousness kind of thing where you could just traverse an enormous amount of data and you take it in a particular direction. And it's like everything loads instantly and you just get text. There's no, okay, maybe the occasional image. I don't know. But like, I don't want ads. I don't want interactive stuff. I don't want JavaScript. I want to define like a schema that all of the nodes must adhere to. And a node will not surface if it's not, like, the node will just error out if it's not adhering to the schema. And the schema is just a data structure. Like, you get to upload a list of, and then you have like a couple fundamental types. So you just get to upload a list. And then those lists might have like pairs of like commentary followed by a link. And that's it. And then what this would turn into when you are actually looking at it from the viewer's perspective is this like collective like mind map of all these interconnected ideas. And I just want people to just traverse this kind of, I just want people to be able to traverse this kind of a graph and then just like follow along and be able to comment on anything. And again, comment means create your new node and then point it to that old node. And then I can see what this person's been up to. And it's all just text. It's all just text, no JavaScript. It's all just data structures. And anyone can host their own node. And the website will just hit yours. And I would just love that. Maybe at first it can be something with like a group of friends. And we just post our own little collective blog. And then we slowly open it up. I don't know how to execute it. I don't know how to really execute this idea well. But, yeah. So that's this idea that's been floating in my head. And I just wonder about it. I just wonder what we could do with that kind of thing. Yep. And if you've made it this far, yeah, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. I hope this has been inspiring for you. And maybe it gets you thinking about stuff that really matters. Not that this really matters, but thinking is, in my opinion, like the best thing we can do to exercise our minds and serve maybe like a test bed for those ideas that really do matter. So, yeah, I hope I could have been some sort of an inspiration. And thanks for listening. I'm blessed to have you around. Take care.